Good afternoon. My name is Asa Lender and I'm a junior at Knoxville High School. I'm the captain of both the local debate and speech teams, and I recently became a junior delegate for the Marion County Democratic Party. It was at an event for the party in Knoxville, hosted by the Peachtree Brewing Company, where I was invited to come and speak at this event. I'm here to speak to you about young people in our society, what we value, how we differ from one another, and the issues we're likely to face as a growing population. I hope in part to give you my perspective, the viewpoint of a Native teenager in 2018, and how I would like the party to progress and evolve. More importantly, however, I wish to inform local area Democrats on some issues and concepts that many of you may not be fully aware of, if you're conscious to them at all. I'm sure all of you are both aware of and concerned by the rising cost of college tuition, and the difficulties students have to endure to make by, be it during college or afterwards. The reality in America is that the high cost of higher education is a specter of debt that will haunt you for decades, summoned by the shaky promise that your education will lead to a greater ability to pay off loans that often are next to mandatory for the middle class. Fewer of you, however, are likely aware of how my generation is specifically reacting to the fact that few of us will be able to make it through college without saddling ourselves with hundreds of thousands of dollars eating away at our future. Interesting trait of my generation is that through a regular nightly rotation of terrorist attacks, record-breaking natural disasters, and the economic recession of the mid-2000s, we have developed a sense of dry, cynical, and nuanced humor. We joke about the dangers we face every time we go to school, as well as the well-meaning yet poorly executed methods our government puts in place to protect us. The corruption of the executive administration, the increasingly dire nature of our environment, and the apparent failures of a capitalistic world are all treated with a mix of concern and humor. For if people raised on terror and anxiety have little choice but to adapt and make the best of it. When it comes to the stress of paying for college, we treat the subject with the same level of black humor that we treat any other tragedy. Many of us simply accept it, joking how, of course, we'll go into debt. Everyone does it, and there's no way around it. Others run from that fear and fall into patterns of ineffectual ignorance and distraction, giving up on the idea of a high-paying job, settling for an immediate access to menial labor that will pay for little more than food and phone bills. It was likely through this fear that the presidential candidate Bernie Sanders showed to many of my generation as a shining savior. That was clearly sidelined by his loss of the nomination. My point being, my generation, commonly referred to as Generation Z, copes with our problems through a dark and cynical form of humor to normalize the stress that we undergo. Our future is both aspiring and oppressive, and many of us fear the uncertainty ahead. To relate to and energize the youth, you must first attempt to understand us and understand that while these coping mechanisms may seem crude, they are in fact the survival tactics of a generation under siege. With the Never Again, Black Lives Matter, and Me Too movements progressively gaining traction and political attention, I've heard many people, both local and otherwise, confidently refer to my generation as the generation that will light the torch which will engulf President Donald Trump and his ilk in flames of democracy and progressive patriotism. I truly hope that this is the case, particularly if the various investigations into the president bear the fruit of scandal and corruption. However, I'm wary of this confidence. I regularly interact with people my age as well as those who are much younger and older than I. And while I might stand before you as a seemingly excessively wordy teenage boy, I found that I'm able to easily mesh between other social groups. A skill that has proven useful when it comes to the analytical understanding of the adolescent perspective. What I found hasn't bestowed upon me the level of confidence so many have expressed, nor the brash certainty that I held during the 2016 election, when I held no doubt that Hillary Clinton would become the next president. Instead, I have discovered a politically uninformed clan of children who are simultaneously perfectly reasonable yet dumbfoundingly concerning. They do not know the constantly shifting presidential cabinet nor the details of the FBI investigations. In fact, many cannot recall hearing the names Mueller or Manafort, and when I tell the stories of corruption and international deceit, tales of which we here are intimately familiar with, they always prove to be a shock, months after the news of such events breaks. To many of my peers, the 2016 election came down to an uncomfortable choice between two equal evils. The fact is that the only candidate that spoke to much of my generation at any levels was Bernie Sanders, and even then, many see him as an angry old man more laughable than inspiring. While I find the marches occurring across the country to be astoundingly important and impressive, I wish to press upon the need that we must never believe that just because a march in the Capitol building in Des Moines receives a good crowd, that the majority of Iowan or even American children as a greater demographic are completely tuned into the ongoing issues. In order to energize new voters for the Democratic Party, we must keep in mind that we will have to fight tooth and nail for every vote. We live in a propagandistic country where media corporations like ABC will put money into a Jimmy Kimmel special while simultaneously airing episodes of a pro-Trump season of Roseanne. Even worse, news sources like Fox News, no matter how ridiculous they behave, inevitably contribute to the cultural osmosis over politics. Hence the aforementioned belief in Hillary Clinton being an evil to Donald Trump. For the Democratic Party to gain more votes and to remain relevant, to maintain an America that is just and true, and to produce an America that is more to the liking of the people, we must allow ourselves to improve our systems of argument. Too often our political systems are bought with party politics and ideologues, with a total lack of true opinions independent of our party. Party politics, party loyalty rather, is an excellent method of vote accumulation. But I fear that the long-term effects of such a strategy lead to voter apathy as a result of the gridlock that occurs. In order to win an argument, to properly develop yourself as a thinker and as a citizen, you must not immediately attempt to cripple someone's argument before understanding it. There is no true intellectual victory in yelling at someone until they grow sick of you and or give up, or in bulldozing an argument as it's laid out before you. Instead, you should take your opponent's idea in full, mold it in your mind, and elevate it to the best version of itself it can be. Make it holy in its complexity and development until it is a pillar of thought and politic. Then, if you're able to do the same to your opinion, and then put the two towers against one another, and still remain triumphant, not through brute linguistic force, but through superior foundation, then you might have something worth fighting for. Managing to do so while simultaneously energizing a voter base is a daunting task, no doubt. Yet, I believe that to progress as a society, we must converse with those whose political ideology we have referred to as deplorable. And we must first understand them and communicate with them before attempting to brush through the gridlock we so painfully have endured. Perhaps in opposition to my own anxiety over my peers and their lack of knowledge with the current political climate, I have seen various exceptions. While many do not know specifically what is going on in the White House and the great dangers that are present within it, I have, the violently frantic and chaotic nature of the current times are leading to many people to further educate themselves. I have friends who, over the last 2 years, have gone from having a general disinterest in politics to a worried yet energized perspective more in tune with the dangers facing our society. I suspect that the same sorts of individuals, similar to those I have met, are the ones organizing and attending the various anti-gun violence rallies occurring across the country. While my generation isn't the most focused on the systems of governance, largely caused by a combination of fear that of its perceived bureaucratic complexity, a lack of time disposed upon them as a result of the demanding educational system, and a belief that there is little that they can do to change things, there is no shortage of passion among them. When topics like climate change and net neutrality come to the forefront, that is when I see my peers become more focused. These are the topics that bind us, and for good reason. Economist and social theorist Jeremy Rifkin, an advisor to the European Union, the People's Republic of China, and Angela Merkel of Germany, states in a lecture released on February 13th of this year that issues of internet boundaries, free speech, and survival in a shifting climate will be the foundational policies of my generation, more evident than any other topics and accompanied by regulations upon vast new technologies such as self-driving cars, the progressively automated systems of labor, and the new entrepreneurial job outlooks we will adapt to in an internet age. If the Democratic Party wishes to attract new voters, these are the issues I believe that we should focus upon. Before I come to my conclusion, I would like to make a further suggestion to the Democratic Party, to make use of a hopeful passage through our rigid political gridlock and to work towards manifesting an America that betters the people rather than the rush of party politics. We must begin to invest in something that other nations have taken in stride: our physical and digital infrastructure and how we will adapt it to function in the 21st century. I previously mentioned Jeremy Rifkin, and much of what I refer to as, quote, bettering our physical and digital infrastructure ties back to his research. When Jeremy Rifkin was asked by Angela Merkel to advise her on the furthering of the German economy, he went to Berlin and told her that in order to improve and grow the German economy, the nation must distance itself from an infrastructure reliant upon fossil fuels, since the productivity and affordability of such systems peaked years ago. The reason that this is the case is because a fossil fuel economy can't get above the ceiling of a 20% aggregate efficiency. Aggregate efficiency being the total combined productivity of contributing factors. If you wish to learn more about this, I highly encourage Jeremy Rifkin's lecture or book, The Third Industrial Revolution, A Radical New Sharing Economy. It's on YouTube, so it's free. With that productivity ceiling in mind, as well as the dangers of a worsening climate, the government must begin aggressively working towards ridding ourselves of the current system of fossil fuel energy. That's how we need to advance our physical infrastructure, by moving on from an energy source that's a remnant of the second industrial revolution. As for our digital infrastructure, we must invest in the protection of internet systems from corporations and government influence, be that the topic of net neutrality or the negative influence coming in from outside forces wishing to use propaganda to manipulate global elections. I am a Democrat not because I align with a party as though they are my clan, nor as though it is a religion for which I must defend. I am a Democrat because the majority of the ideals and actions that I wish to bring about fall in line with party policy, and because I find the alternative to be a system of bigotry and corruption with a history that is both unappealing and worrisome in context to our modern way of life. Again, I discourage party politics and promote valuable political discourse between conservatives and progressives. As an anti-authoritarian, a junior delegate, and an active member in the American political system, I look forward to a hopeful blue wave crashing against the banks of our nation to bring about every Democratic dream of the upcoming midterm and the presidential election. I hope for a blue wave may it wash away the damage we've already endured. Thank you very much, and if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Attracted you to him as opposed to Hillary? Because I know Bernie would say, you know, we need better funding for college, things like that. Is that what spoke to those folks, or what do you think? Why was Bernie such an attraction to them? Because he's been in Congress for
yes, yeah, I understand that he's been in the political sphere for years. So when it comes to which specific candidate I supported, in hindsight, my views have changed a bit. I did support Hillary Clinton as well as Bernie Sanders. I was prepared, or even Martin O'Malley. I saw him speak. I thought he was excellent. But I was prepared to support whichever candidate became the Democratic nominee. What I think attracted people of my generation was his energy, and the fact that even though he had been around for a while, the majority of them had never heard of him before. Lots of people knew who Hillary Clinton was. There was already a ton of bad press about her. There was all of this negativity towards her that she was associated with. Whereas Bernie Sanders, for a lot of young people, he just previously to the 2016 election, he would have been lost in a crowd. But as soon as he got out, we see this incredibly unique personality. Even though he is another angry man in politics, and there's lots of those. Bernie Sanders had a certain quality that was different and that people found refreshing, I believe. And in addition, yeah, the policy of more affordable college totally, absolutely was a major factor. Like a lot of young people that got into politics that year, like they were one-issue voters, and that was that they need more affordable education, and Bernie Sanders was offering free education, which is like above all else, like that is the guy. If you want, like that to them, that is the guy. If that's your topic, you go to them. So, anything else?
You were talking about how some of the students that you know don't know the issues very well and aren't aware of things that happened 2 weeks ago. Mm-hmm. How do you think that could change?
That's a good question. I know that I don't learn these things at school. My family being involved helps, but a lot of what I do as an individual to educate myself, I read, I take it my own initiative to going about doing these things. But in terms of actively energizing people to be more informed, I think our politicians really just need to make sure that they can make that connection. Because one way that a lot of people became informed, right, was through candidates like Bernie Sanders, and I see it through candidates like Cory Booker or Elizabeth Warren. As soon as like a candidate, and Democratic candidates are especially good at this, if they really click, if they're the right amount of charisma and uniqueness, if they look different enough, if they sound different enough, if they're their own character to a certain degree, then that's really going to attract more people. They'll be able to recognize them. They're going to want to know more. Because it's not that my generation isn't curious. It's just that they're incredibly distracted, and there's a sea of like I said, it looks like a complex, bureaucratical, like dangerous like thing that you don't want to like get into because it's too confusing. When in reality, I don't think it's that perplexing. And when I explain these scenarios to people, they're genuinely interested or horrified, right? So I don't think that it's a lack of them being able to understand it. I just think that there's something else, and we just need to find out how to inspire them through our politicians. I think that's generally what we need to do.
Are there, there used to be, is there now like a high school students for Democrats?
I'm afraid not. They're not at Knoxville. Not at Knoxville. There may be at other schools. I know that there are Gay Street alliances at other schools, not at Knoxville. Knoxville's a little smaller. I think we have about 500 students. But that's roughly what I think it is. And but no, there is no political organization specifically. The closest thing we have is the debate or speech teams, but that's not a partisan thing. That's just generally the more politically informed people go there. The coach of that is actually sort of closer to a libertarian, right? So the political people, they all sort of, you know, they're all in one area, but there's no specific clubs for that, no.
Oh, okay, go ahead.
One of the things you talked about earlier in your remarks about connections and those sorts of things, and those who are younger than you as well as older than you, what are some of the things that as you have a conversation with your peers and those who are younger than yourself, what are some things that we can anticipate being issues, being concerns that
Right.
5 years from now we need to know that that's going to be those who will be voting.
Right.
So I'd be interested in just hearing what you're hearing and talking about
Right.
that.
Technology, access to the net new. I have never seen so many people, primarily of my age group, primarily boys, but girls as well, so terrified when it came to any political system, any political like issue until net neutrality came about. There were so many people that all of a sudden were worried. They knew like all these things. They knew that President Trump was against it. They knew who was against it. I can't remember the name of the Republican who was in charge of that. Does anyone remember his name? The one who.
Or you mean the head of
Yeah,
the
yes.
Ajit Pai, yeah.
Ajit Pai, yeah. Ajit.
Oh, what's his last
He-
name? Mr. Pai?
Yeah,
it's
Mr. Pai.
Yeah.
Never have I seen the people were so immediately energized against him. There was such animosity against that guy specifically because he was like net neutrality was this huge issue. Or when it comes to self-driving cars, renewable energy, all the technology things, like that's going to be a major, major, major issue. Like we're going to be facing a completely different type of politics before long, and a lot of it's going to revolve around a lot of this technology, a lot of the internet, right? And it just comes between, I believe that the Republicans are probably going to further align over businesses progressively taking over things, potentially producing some sort of monopoly. I don't know, but I'm curious as to how that works out, but seriously, technology is how you're going to get new people in. Technology and charismatic politicians, seriously.
How do we get young people to join us in these luncheons?
That's a good question.
Pay for them?
Well, we would do that.
Get them out of that.
That's a difficult question. A lot of the kids that I find would be interested in coming to these events are incredibly busy. There's not, it's not necessarily good. There are kids who do care. There are good Democrat kids who do care, but those are the kids that are so poor, like busy. They're constantly working. They're in sports. They're in activities. They're in theater, like everything. So you could put more information on the school if that's an option, through teachers to kind of announce that sort of stuff. I think that's the best way you could do it. But genuinely, I think it's going to be kind of an uphill battle based on a lot of the obligations that those kids are putting themselves in, myself included. I make time for this because this is stuff that I'm really passionate about. But getting new people, that might be a little difficult. You had a question?
Yeah, like the Parkland students have really, it felt like they've emboldened your generation to step up. Is Knoxville students, do you see that with your peers? Like on 420, are they organizing anything for that?
So what I think is, I've heard that I know that Pleasantville was doing things in support of that. Knoxville, on the other hand, I've talked to multiple people. I posted on social media asking them that question. Essentially, are any of you going to go and do things? I want to genuinely know what your opinion is. And overall, like, people, like Knoxville specifically isn't going to be doing much. Right? Right now, there's no protest planned. There's no walkout. There's nothing of the sort. I've been told that I should organize that, but I'm not sure if there's even enough kids that would really be energized to do that in Knoxville. Knoxville is an interesting school, and it's slightly more conservative, but also there's just kind of a low energy when it comes to that sort of stuff. But then the kids that do have the high energy and they are passionate about this, they're really involved. So I'll have to see. But no, there's nothing planned at the moment for any protests. But there are in other schools. I know that for certain.
Yeah, so I think Tommy Lehrman is really good at clickbaiting young people, and we don't have any response to that as Democrats. We don't have some cute blonde trying to get young people all riled up about Democratic issues, whereas she does a really good job on the Republican side. How do we answer for that? Do you think that's effective? And then also my other question is, what kind of social media should we be promoting our messages on that kids that are engaged actually follow? Because it's constantly changing.
Right. Well, when it comes to, I'll answer your second question first. When it comes to social media, I think a better way is to try and put that information onto the schools. I think that is genuinely going to, if you're going to get any kids, right?
Schools don't really let us share.
Oh, well then I'm afraid, because I know that I follow the various political things on Twitter, right? And the Twitter is used, but a lot of the social media right now is like closed groups. They're closer to sort of a complicated texting situation, so it's less of a general sort of feed like Twitter is. But again, Twitter is probably going to be a good way to get like college kids, right? Or especially high school students that are really paying attention. But overall, it's going to be really tough. It's going to be really tough to like try and influence that way, because a lot of people are actively going to like not go, even if they would be interested otherwise, they're going to actively sort of not go into that, which is unfortunate. But as for sort of a strategy to get people, sort of like the clickbait sort of thing, I think, I don't know.
Do we have a person?
Do I have a person?
Is there any young person that you look up to in the way that some of the other people follow Tommy Lehrman?
I'm only vaguely familiar with the woman that you're talking about, but
as we all should only be vaguely familiar.
There are other figures. I know that there are people like Ben Shapiro. I know that there are people like Ben Shapiro who are who are online, and I think that might. But I think that the audience is a little older. I think that's mostly male Republican college students. Although I think that there's probably a high school sort of demographic for him. But I think what's going to happen is the best way to get a lot of the largest amount of people is going to be musicians, which I don't know that we have a whole lot of influence over, right? But like when a musician performs at like the DNC, right? That's going to get more attention, or things like that. But in terms of like individual people, it's a hard mixture. You know what I mean? Maybe someone who goes on the news a whole bunch and is like very sort of their own character, right? That might be the case. But like manufacturing a viral hit of a person, of an individual, not even just content, but an individual, that's incredibly difficult. And I don't think anyone properly knows how to do that.
Are there young people in our Iowa legislature right now that you happen to be aware of or know of, such as Raz Smith, Abby Finkenauer?
Only vaguely. Only vaguely.
Okay, so none of those people that are out there right now, currently in
Megan
our state.
Carr. Don't forget Megan
Well, I'm talking legislators. We do have some young legislators that specifically, you know, kind of really represent a young population.
Right.
So you don't feel them reaching out to?
I think I recognize that they are reaching out. I'm just worried that it's not effective, and I'm not positive as to how to make that effective. But I think just continue trial and error, but also getting people to sort of project that voice, to project that sort of that message. That's what you're going to have to get, because it's going to be somewhat like someone at this level of like not that people know about, right? And then like if they do like shout outs to other people, then they might hear about that, right? It's going to be difficult. Oh, Vox. Do any of you guys who knows about Vox?
Oh, Ezra Klein.
Yeah, Ezra Klein. Who knows about Vox?
Right.
Right. Who knows about Vice?
I think I
Right.
have seen
Vox and Vice. There you go. That is how. The individual people are going to be decently effective, right? But like a person like Rachel Maddow, I don't know that even Rachel Maddow is like more popular, right? I don't know that you're looking for a specific person. You're looking for a multimedia sort of group, and you have that in the form of Vice News and Vox, and that's how you get that. That's ways that are simplifying information without watering it down, right, and making it like consumable for young people who really have no clue, right? And that's how Vox and Vice. There you go. That's how you do that.
You talked a little bit in your comments about mid-year elections and some of those sorts of things, and what how that may percolate some opportunities for engagement and conversation. As we think about between now and primary on June 5th and election in November, are there certain types of programs, activities, engagements that those who will be eligible to vote in the fall or in 2020, that we can get some of those folks, whether it's understanding the 17-year-olds who get registered now to vote in November, if we think about what are some things that we can engage people in this summer that may help them get connected to electoral politics. So what if we were to do a, whatever we might want to call it, Democrats Rising or Young Democrats plus, some type of a, academy, summer camp, training, those sorts of things, to think about ways to get people engaged in doing that. Beyond the just walking the parades with us or traditional door knocking, some of those sorts of things sometimes.
So, again, Knoxville is a small school, and I think that's an excellent idea. But when it comes to Knoxville, I think that's mostly going to be word of mouth. When it comes to larger schools, like schools in Des Moines, schools that might be where a lot of those kids, where there's more kids sort of to bring that word of mouth, right? More politically active kids that are going to all those marches and things. I know that I've been to a few of them, but I'm the only one that I know, right? When it comes to from my school, I'm the only one. When it comes to those larger schools, right? I would try and contact some of those speakers. I know that there were multiple speakers at. When was the Never Again march up at the state capitol? When was that? January.
Women's March.
Around there were multiple high school students who were speaking there. There were multiple speakers who were high school students. I would try and find out who those sorts of people are and see if they might be able to, through word of mouth, do that. If you're not able to get into the school system, right? If you're not able to, which I understand, right? I understand the systems of that. I understand why they're in place, and I think it's maybe a good thing that they are in place, so that, because alternatively, Republicans would similarly do the same thing. I think that you should contact those sorts of kids. And those are the kids that are going to spread all that information, who are really going to get that word talking. But that's how you do it. Because it's who you know. And if you don't know any of these kids, and if you aren't able to get any of these kids, it's going to be uphill battle. And otherwise, you just got to rely on, something that I've thought of is Vox and Vice or something like it, right? Something around that should do basically a breakdown. They won't be able to do that in Iowa because I think they're national companies, right? National news organizations, but a breakdown of every candidate. I think that could be really valuable. sort of more information being put out there, like what does this candidate stand for, what does this one stand for, what does that go over, what do they like? I think simplifying that, right, to make it so that it doesn't just seem like politician X and politician Z, right? I think that that's a really good way, you know what I mean? Does that make sense? Not watering it down, but making it more consumable.
I think you're also saying that it's up to us maybe to tell our politicians what you're saying here today, what the young people want to hear if they want their votes. And maybe we're the conduit to these people who run for office.
Right.
We need to do that too, right?
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. No, for sure. Making sure that that politicians know this is really important. It's really important. I think a lot of them are in tune to it. There's Cory. Cory Booker is very good. And more and more people are progressively knowing who Cory Booker is. He's doing a very excellent job and making a name for himself. And regardless as to what, I suspect even lots of people say that he'll run for president. He may. I think he's just going to progressively become more and more and more involved. And more people are going to know his name, and he's just going to be a super recognizable face, and that's someone who is in tune to how to do it. You go on different news, like internet news things, you talk to them, right? You're a host on a given issue. I've seen Cory Booker go and explain something of the new Republican budget. He went on a YouTube channel and explained that, right? Doing that sort of stuff, being in tune to that, and doing it genuinely rather than just as like a corporation style, like trying to get into tune to the youth. Doing it genuinely with politicians who are genuinely going to be good at that, and their staff who are genuinely going to be good at that. That's really valuable. So yeah, communicate that to all these politicians. Anything else? Any other questions?
Oh, go ahead. Somebody else.
Is our jar making its way around?
Yeah.
It's over here. Has it been over there?
Have you had it?
No, I don't have it.
Oh,
So
Jan, you had a question?
is it
Well,
all around?
it was
Yes.
more of a, I was thinking about trying to get in contact with high school kids.
Okay.
And I know in the past, and now there's a new administration and so forth, but it was when Obama was running. Yeah, and we were trying to let high school students know that there is a campaign office if you're interested in what's going on, and trying to build some momentum. But the school, and I pretty much said, you know, I don't care if the Republican Party wants to post something as well. That's great. Let's get kids involved in this if they're interested.
Okay.
But they shut us down and just said, oh, we don't want to get involved in that, you know. And it was more just letting them know this is a possibility. Is there someone that you know of in Knoxville High School that you think would, I mean, we probably still have to go through the administration, but is there like a faculty member that you think would be open to that kind of thing, or?
No one specifically comes to mind, but I'll have to get back to you on that, Jan.
Okay.
I'll give it a thought.
That'd be fine.
So does your student council do anything political, or are they just me?
Not that I know of. I'm not even certain who's on my student council. But anyway, it's pretty minimal. It's pretty minimal. It's small.